Welcome to the virtual read-along for Women of Color in Tech, a blueprint for inspiring and mentoring the next generation of technology innovators, where 7th and 8th grade girls get exposed to the lessons learned in the tech industry. Last week, we talked about building our network with Chapter 5. This week, we'll discuss building your skills. To preview Chapter 6, we're joined by Ashley Turner, founder of Philly Tech Sisters, an organization that aims to help women of color get more involved in the technology field by providing technical and professional development through introductory, beginner, and intermediate workshops, networking events, and industry talks. Not only is Ashley passionate about EdTech, but she's also on a mission to help diversify the tech industry by getting women of color involved in the field. Ashley, welcome to the discussion.
Thank you so much. I'm super excited to be here. This is a great book, and I'm just excited about having this conversation.
Absolutely. So in general, but more specifically about the chapter, what are your thoughts?
I agree with so many things. First of all, your education and the route that you choose is a very personal route. And I would like to advocate for there is no one right way. And so a lot of times when you're a student or you're growing up, you're thinking that, oh, I'm going to choose a career and I'm going to do that forever. And it's a straight line. And it doesn't look like that at all in real life. Your career path is often very windy. And so you could take different roads, but eventually if you listen to, what you're really interested in, you always end up in the right spot. And if for some reason that you don't, you could just take a different path. And so this kind of spelled that out. Like there are several different opportunities that you could take. And here's things to consider when you're making those choices. So I love the way it mapped out. Basically, think about these pros and cons in any of these choices.
So Susanne, as the author, what do you want readers to take away from Chapter 6?
I'd like them to think about, really think about not only, what their interests are, but what are the best ways to get that skill. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go out, get a 4-year degree and spend, $100,000, $200,000, dollars, and sometimes be in considerable debt. Sometimes, depending on the career path that you're going on, there might be more effective ways of getting that experience and building that skill. There might be ways to be a little bit more immersive than what you would get from a traditional 4-year degree. You may not necessarily have to go to graduate school if you already have, a traditional undergraduate degree. It may just be an issue of getting some experience under your belt, however that you can get it. So just thinking a little bit more broadly about how you acquire skill and thinking about what it is you're trying to accomplish, what you know that you can take on, not what society is telling you that you have to do, but you know yourself enough to know, I don't want to go back to school. I don't want to spend the money. And just thinking about that a little bit more deeply.
Yeah, touching on what the both of you had mentioned, I think, I learned, and what I hope our readers had also learned, is that there are so many options for building professional technical skills. And I think, especially as someone who, and I guess all of us, we're all raised in our own backgrounds and are maybe only really exposed to one way of pursuing a certain, skill set or, gaining that level of, professionality. It's cool to actually have all of these different options presented. And especially appreciating that the chapter, kind of lists the factors to consider and decide upon, if this is an option for you and if it's right for both your personal and career goals. That's definitely something that I think, all of those, things to consider are, so well threaded throughout the book. And it's nice to kind of see that continuation with that in this week's chapter as well. I think another thing that I had also noticed was the connections to the previous chapter with building the network, and how some of these skill building options can also help you grow and develop your network. So kind of seeing the significance in, with chapter to chapter and combining the different like skill sets and aspects you need to consider, into one when you're looking deeper into that. And also learning more about you, Ms. Turner. I think starting to realize you're like the perfect guest for this chapter, because the work that you do again is so well rounded and touching upon, like as you said, the soft skills, the hard skills, leadership. It's kind of just all in one place. And, definitely something that, like, I wouldn't be surprised if I saw, like, Philly, Texas as, like, one of the resources in this chapter, It's like, it's got to be on there.
Yeah, totally. I try to think about, the person 360, and just how to create an inclusive environment where they not only get technical skills, because you can learn technical skills by watching YouTube or, doing self-paced, but having that community there during those workshops, we have mentors that serve as our TAs during our workshops. And we break the groups up into women of 5 or 6. So every group is assigned a mentor. And that mentor is there to help them along the way as they're going through the workshop, so they don't have to feel anxiety about raising their hand and asking a question, because there's been some studies that say, women, especially marginalized women or people from marginalized groups, often feel, nervous about asking questions, right? Or in front of a crowd. So we created that small group. So they have someone there, that is right there, shoulder to shoulder, that they could just lean over to their neighbor and ask a question. So, we're trying to create a sense of community during our workshops that hopefully will continue on after the event, right? So hopefully that mentor will serve, a purpose for them to reach out to when they're trying things on their own, because there's only so much that you can learn, in a couple hours, right? So we just try to really instill that community environment.
So there are a lot of different ways that you made recommendations or suggested that you can build skills. The traditional 2 or 4-year degree technical school, the massive online courses, you mentioned those. Where does volunteering to build skills fall for you all?
For me, it has a major impact. It has majorly impacted my life, and I encourage the women that volunteer with us that how it can impact their lives as well. I volunteered for a long time when I made the transition from theater into technology, because one, I wanted to network. I didn't know anyone. I was new to Philadelphia. I didn't know anyone else that was a woman that was in technology in this way. And so I wanted to meet people. And I went to this Women in Tech conference. It was my first, big thing to do when I transitioned into this career. I had never been to a Women in Tech conference or women's conference at all. So all I knew is I saw this ad come up on Facebook. And I said, Women in Tech, that sounds like me. I'm going to go. So I go, and it's like, very exciting, but it was also scary. I'm brand new. And so I met this woman that was there. She was presenting. She gave the welcome speech. And I just felt compelled to tell her, I said, you know what? I'm new here, and I don't really know how to network. What is your advice, for me that I do? And she said, simple, ask people out for coffee. And I was like, okay, I can do that. I can ask people out for coffee. And so that's what I began to do when I began to meet people at these different networking events. But the second piece of advice that she gave me, she said, volunteer. So I began to volunteer for the Women in Tech Summit. And we, submitted the call for proposals. We met weekly to talk in different teams. We really carved out the tracks. We read all the applications. It was, a really great opportunity to do some teamwork and project management skills, because we had, deadlines, and it was a lot of work, but it was so much fun. And I met so many people. So I just began to look for more opportunities to volunteer and just build up my own skill set. I also volunteered for an organization, and I ended up, they were a new organization and they needed a website. But, they didn't have a lot of funding. So as a volunteer, I said, I'll do it. I'll figure it out. Right. So I built this website and I had so much fun doing it. And it just made me, build my skills up and learn new things. I love learning. And so volunteering has just majorly impacted my life. And I bring all those skills to my job, to my work. I'm not a web designer at all, but just to know the languages, enough to be dangerous, so to speak, right? To be able to manipulate things and do things, have it move the way you need it to is enough. And so I've become project lead on different things from the various skills that I've learned from volunteering. And so in turn with Philly Tech Sisters, I really, really encourage people to volunteer as part of our leadership team, so they can gain those leadership skills, those project management, people and relationship building skills, because you need all those skills to work on a team. You don't exist in a bubble, right? So if you want to be, especially if you want to grow to be a manager or a supervisor, you really need leadership skills to fold into those technical skills. So I encourage women to volunteer on our leadership team or be an instructor or serve as mentors, because all of that folds just ties into your technical skill.
Yeah, you're absolutely spot on, Ashley. Like you learn so many great skills at the service of others, and you get to meet great people. And one of the things that I tell mentees, especially as they're thinking about like their resume, they often feel like that volunteer experience doesn't count for anything. I'm like, it most certainly does. And if you don't put it on your resume, I'm going to be really mad. Yeah, you learn real world applicable skill that any employer would kill for. So I definitely advocate it not only to help others out of the sense of community, but if you are genuinely trying to build up a number of different skills, it can be your best bet as opposed to trying to find a job that may require 7 to 10 years experience that you may not necessarily have at that time.
Yeah. If you volunteer to manage, the speaking committee of this organization, then that shows leadership and management skills, right? So no one can take that away from you. If you are over, the call for proposals, you may one day want to submit a speaking proposal, right? So how do you know what the criteria is? You would know if that was your job as a volunteer, what goes on in the background, right? So it gives you insight, broadens your network, and builds your skills.
It's interesting because I think for me and for a lot of our GLIST leaders who, again, are at the middle and high school level, their like engagement and volunteerism and with GLIST is happening, before they have started looking into and kickstarting careers. And so it's almost like the reverse, whereas I think we usually see after you've become kind of an established person in X and Y fields, you go then and off and volunteer to mentor others. So I think, what you both mentioned about the skill sets that you gain from volunteering, which then help, obviously outside of volunteering with project management, soft skills, communication, like all of those things. First of all, when I started GLIST as like a 12-year-old, I didn't even know those skills existed. They were needed and whatnot. But most of all, I didn't expect that I would actually gain them through, you know, whatever GLIST has had to do. And that I think our camp instructors and all, you know, and our GLIST leaders and mentors have all, you know, had to gain. I mean, I don't want to say like by force or out of necessity, but out of just like, it's a natural skill you need to have in order to do what in order to be a volunteer. So I'm very curious to see, both for myself and for our GLIST leaders, you know, that attainment of skills before actually entering the workforce or having experience with those skills, you know, how it will serve for them, you know, moving forward. And then obviously, again, going back to the question of the significance of engaging in volunteering, it is the impact, and being able to, for us GLIST girls, like working so much on impact before even pursuing it ourselves, you know, post high school. I think that also helps to set clear what the intention and the motive, like, you know, the motivation for pursuing this for the sake of your interest, but also, you know, always know, I think volunteering earlier beforehand always helps you remember and see the importance in, you know, making time for mentoring others, even when you are at that career stage, and that it's never, you know, that the importance of that and the significance of that never goes away. And if anything, you will be an even better mentor once you have acquired those skills yourself at such a high level. I hope, you know, I'm very excited to see how, you know, we can all kind of grow in that way, you know, as part of a GLIST, and also, you know, our network with all of you, and seeing how far volunteerism can take us.
So thank you all. As always, joining us from week to week, the author, Susanne Tedrick. We really appreciate you coming into this space. Ashley with Philly, Texas, just thank you so much. And Melina, of course, thank you, and your GLIST girls. We want you all to enjoy this week's reading of Women of Color in Tech, a blueprint for inspiring and mentoring the next generation of technology innovators. 7th and 8th grade girls get exposed to those lessons learned in the tech industry. Enjoy chapter 6.
Yay!